All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back from the break. Really excited. We've had a great lineup of speakers today, and kind of borrowing the end of the baseball season. I know some of you were at the Jays game yesterday. We now have the opportunity to bring in our closer. So I'm really excited to invite Erin Oliver to share some thoughts with us on an ROI case study related to the construction industry. And I just want to highlight, I think it's really important to highlight some of the history and achievements of Erin. Quite honestly and humbly, almost a role model of mine. So I'm really excited to hear Erin talk today. But she's been active in health and safety for over 30 years. Degrees and a minor in forensics, along with graduate certificate in workplace health, mental health leadership from Queen's University. She's currently the Vice President of Health and Safety and Sustainability at Modern Niagara. But I think what I want to highlight here are a couple achievements. So in 2019, Erin was recognized with the award from the Board of Canadian Registered Safety Professionals and honored with the Avett Award for Canadian Safety Leader of the Year from Key Media and the Canadian Occupational Health and Safety magazine in the same year. Continues to be hugely active. Well recognized, and really looking forward to your talk today. So thank you, Erin, for joining us.
Okay, wow. Closer. Hope I don't strike out here, but see what I can do here, folks. And I was madly writing, so my script might sound a little chaotic. I was madly trying to take the experts in the room and infuse their stuff into my presentation so it actually looked a little realistic. So bear with me. I want to make sure that we capture all of the information today. This case study is going to be a little more systemic in nature. I'm not diving into the details as you may have recognized. I am in construction, so that world changes pretty much every single day. And digging into a case study on one site can be completely different to the next. So what we did find was anchoring our methodology in a systemic approach. So bear with me, I will use a few notes. The one thing I did want to say is thank you all for sticking it out today and hanging out with till the end. And the other thing I wanted to say is please make sure you network and collaborate. That is the key to this and going forward. Everything that you should hear, as you've heard from the other speakers, should be open source and is open source. I would advocate that you do that too. That, when you plant that seed of networking, you actually grow it and nurture it and reap that from it and continue to do that very much the way a gardener would. So those are the types of philosophies that undermine or underpin how we've approached health and safety at Modern Niagara. The other thing I'll say before I get into the presentation is Modern Niagara itself as a construction company, we have some pretty incredible challenges. It is a very high-risk organization, as you can imagine. There are two types of risk. Obviously, the imminent life-threatening risks that come with construction, but what is evolving and is becoming an incredibly difficult lift is the mental health and the DEI merge into a very resistant sector. They are very resistant to these types of changes, and what we are seeing is those issues are complicating otherwise simple but injurious situations, and they are of themselves becoming very complicated situations. So the challenge today for all of you who are also witnessing that in your sectors is to pay attention. Pay attention because unfortunately construction is feeling it in spades right now with the opioid crisis and the suicide crisis amongst men. It is confounding and actually really exacerbating what I would say is otherwise typical injuries. And I don't like the answer of typical injuries whatsoever, so, okay. This case study itself is going to delve into some of the critical variables that transfer the qualified research of some of the esteemed people who spoke here today and many others, and take it into a workplace behavior where it's not just, here's the newest research, let's try and apply it. Get it into the system and get acceptance that this is the right way to do it. Make it plain language, make it movable, make it adaptable, and don't wait for that research, that sterilized research, perfection paralysis to take hold and stall an otherwise good idea. That is something that I've seen far too often, And there's some things that you can do to avoid that. So I want to talk about that a bit today. And I also want to make sure that we talk about other factors, and I've mentioned some of the big ones, other factors that do create some problems in the system. You know, it's not been that long since health and safety has been a thing. It became a task in the late 80s and early 90s. It was a task for everybody in a job, and it was, you take 2 minutes to do this task, and then you're safe for the day in the mines or whatever it is, and that was entirely unacceptable. It became a program in the 1990s and into the 2000s. It had some rigor to it, but it was still assigned to certain people to do certain tasks that were pretty prescriptive. We're starting to see in the last decade that it's become more of a behavior. You even hear of behavior-based safety and all of those things. But now I'm going to challenge this room to say it's time to make it a culture. And not just a safety culture, but a culture. Thank you, Jack, and all the others who said it earlier. It's not a task anymore. It's something that we should be embedding into the fabric of our day. And that includes changes to our systemic performance. So, who are we? Modern Niagara itself is a very large organization. We have anywhere, depending on the fluctuation of the jobs, 300 to 450 jobs, projects going on across the country. We are a Canadian mechanical, electrical, building intelligence, controls, and service organization that also includes engineering. So we are a small community that builds for our community. We have 3,000 to 4,500 tradespeople at any given time. We have 43 unions that we are indentured to across the country. Where's my labor relations people? How happy you are hearing that now? Yeah. 6 regions with 4 satellite offices, and we have some partnerships, direct partnerships with up to 25 unions right now. And that means direct one-on-one mental health support to the union, whether they're a member of our company or not. We have won several awards as a company as well, as Canada's Safest Employers, and we've won Canada's Top 100 several times, and we are Canada's Top Managed Company. Why is that not moving? There we go. Better, okay. But what I want to underpin about Modern is we've set some tenets for ourselves, some immutable structures that we have created a culture around. Those immutable structures, we have a purpose. We build for our communities. We build for the health and well-being of our communities. We have a vision. That vision is to be the best at what we can do for our community, for our client, for our employees. We have our core values, and they were solicited not just from our own people, but stories from our clients. And you'll notice the word safety isn't in there. Again, I believe culture is more than safety. It's not a standalone item. And then we have a SMAC recipe. For those of you who are Jim Collins fans, you know, we developed a SMAC recipe that is specific, methodical, and consistent. The cogs themselves are technical. We got to bid the right work. We got to build the right team. We got to, engage with the right clients. But the overarching or the box around that, the band that holds it all together, is to make sure that we make sure it's fun. It's fun for us and our communities. So there's a bit of trust, there's a bit of camaraderie, there's a bit of collaboration. And it has got to be safe, okay? Those are tenets of what hold our 4 pillars together. So safety isn't a standalone task within it. It is the fabric of all 4 of our elements. Okay. Am I going the right way here? Okay. And the other thing we've done is we've made our model people-centered. And this model's been out with Modern for about a year, but what is really fascinating to me is that the National Safety Council just released a report in the US just 2 weeks ago. And they have a model that is quite familiar. It is very people-centered. It develops the health and safety, then the organizational, behavioral well-being, and then it goes community, and then it goes sustainable global initiatives. We have put our people in the center of this, and the flywheel that supports those people are health and safety, our people and culture, and our labor leadership. So we've actually identified labor managers who ensure the optimal performance, both on an operations side, but on a people side. They are trained in mental health first aid. They are trained in identifying risks and calling us if they see risks before they happen. We have an apprentice who's struggling with financial. He's not making it to work every day because he can't afford gas. Those are the kinds of things that they're starting to call out for us so that we can do our best to remove the issues that are impairing people's well-being in the engagement of work. The other thing we've done with these labor managers is we've taken, how many of you heard of the battery approach to mental health? You know, what's your battery like today? You know, and I like that approach, but I think for my company, it's incomplete. What I mean by that is we've actually asked them to think of a backpack analogy. What kind of backpack do you have? They could have got it from a secondhand store, they could have stole it from their kid, they could get the best one they possibly could get from MEC or whatever it is. Now, I've got a whole bunch of rocks in front of them. Financial, children, relationships, their job, the travel to work, sick parents. And each one of those rocks has a size and a mass. Start throwing them in their backpack. That's what you're asking them to carry around all day when they start their job. Some have great backpacks and lots of coping mechanisms, support, light load. Others have an incredible load with a really, really undervalued backpack. We ask them to start talking about it in a way that they're talking about rocks. But now they start sharing. So now I've got that young apprentice who can't afford gas to get to work each day. I got a foreman or a journey person saying, hey, you want a carpool? It's on me. They don't have to talk about the stress. They don't have to talk about it. But what it does, obviously, is support. But it builds trust. It builds communication. And it's starting to challenge the stigma around mental health and the stigma, I'm going to say it, man up. They use that phrase a lot in construction, in toolbox talks and all those things. Starting to challenge some of those things just by taking it and putting it into an analogy that's very physical, that's material handling in nature. We've created a conversation that allows them to support one another in a little bit of a different way. And that actually gets sent out by our tradespeople now. What's in your backpack today? Can I help with it at all? Is it too heavy? Let me help you for a little bit. And they're starting to connect to stressors in a different way. As we heard, those things that cause back pain, those things that cause smoking issues are also the things that we are seeing causing opioid addiction. Okay? So challenge that conversation a little bit. So we've made people the center of our organizational approach, and then the operations happen all around it. You got great people doing great things all together, you're going to have great outcomes when you've got good guidance documents. So, oops, I'm going the wrong way again. But how do we motivate that level of engagement? It's almost like Maslow for me. I see it's really important for us to get great work. So we build some of the most complex structures in this country. We are in nuclear plants. We build almost every hospital in this country. If anybody, are you in hospitals? We are your service technicians, we are your mechanical contractor, usually we're your electrical contractor, building controls, but we're quiet in the background. And we were there all through COVID. The tradespeople were in the rooms, fixing the toilets, fixing the air handlers to the best that we could the whole time. So getting good work that is really valuable and gives these people purpose is the first thing. Then comes safe work. Make sure it's safe. They feel that they can participate and be meaningful. I'm preaching to the converted about safe work, but you know, that level of engagement comes second. If they don't have work, it's not safe. But only after they have good work is safety the issue. Then we get into well-engaged work. That's that collaboration, that communication you're hearing. It's been said over and over today. If we don't share the stories and the information around that, we make sure that that's issue. Sorry, I skipped equipped work. I can go into the equipped work for a second. We use Milwaukee tools a lot. I'm going to talk about Milwaukee. They're a great partner of ours. Their engineers did not have a people-focused approach on one of their tool adaptations. Lovely. They took a tool, made it much lighter, much quicker. Guys could use it with one hand. They could cut through material really quick. The trade-off was it was lighter and quicker, so it was torquey. And it started to cut through material and it would kick back, and I was losing thumbs at an incredible rate. Picked up the phone and called 3 of my competitors and said, I got a problem. And I didn't recognize the problem for what it was at the beginning. And they all went, yep. So we aggregated our data. I sat with 2 of our biggest competitors and aggregated our data. and came up and said, you know what, it's one tool. And we called them. And the reason I'm actually saying their name is because they not only stepped up, they flew engineers up to meet with us, to look at all the data, to meet with the people that had been injured, and then they flew us down to redesign the tool. The best story I could share, but that's because what would normally be a siloed conversation, we dropped the hubris and said, nope, these people matter more. So that's about 4 years ago. And Milwaukee to this day will call the three of us and say, we're about to launch a new tool, can we beta test it? Yes you can, okay? Good equipment and a good relationship with your procurement team and your providers will get you infinitely farther than just going and buying something off the shelf and making it fit the worker. Okay? And then, of course, the teamwork. You know, once they've got good work, safe work, well-equipped work, the right tools, the right design, that's when the collaboration and the optimization of performance and schedule and conversation, and this is where we really build with our client relations. If we can go to them with the best answers and we can call out the problems, it's so much better. I refer to health and safety as a branch. You can either use it to really harm somebody and hit them with it and beat them down with it, or you can use it as an olive branch and offer support and change. This is where this works really well, okay? Offer the olive branch, talk to the people that you're going to have challenges with, that's a good relationship, and work them out and have that relationship before you have to have the hard conversations. That's not the time to build a good relationship. Critical to this is celebrate when you're done. Acknowledge success, celebrate performance, you know, be part of the grand opening of a hospital, be part of the opening of Center Block at Parliament Hill. All of these things, make sure our team is front and center as part of the team that achieved the success, and then repeat it. And repeat doesn't mean just start over, it means lessons learned, what worked, great, what didn't, what is mutable to the next transition. Tools change, buildings change, design styles change. Don't just say, well, that worked last time, so it will work this time. That worked last time. Does it align with the next time? Okay, there's a bit of a pause there that sometimes we forget. And making sure our team does that is a huge, huge part of our success. Now, a little bit busy. I know with the lights, it's a little bit busy. And this is a systemic placemat that I've been developing through both research with white and gray paper research, but also observational of the journey of Modern Niagara. When they hired me, by the way, they'd never had a safety person in the organization. I was the first ever safety person hired inside of Modern Niagara. It's only been 8 years. Before that, I was a consultant. So their journey was literally from zero to where we are today. And to try and capture that in a way that made sense for people, I said, well, okay, you got a whole bunch of individuals trying to do the right thing. You know, they're working on their own, they're doing their thing. Who are the leaders? How are they leading? And very early in safety, you saw that people were leading by the green book, by the policy. They were policing, and the time for safety policing is over. I will say that plainly. That is the stick approach to safety, okay? It comes as a last resort. How are you speaking? Are you talking at them? Are you authoritative? And this has a bit of a nuance to it. Of course, brand new people need to be instructed the first time, but it doesn't mean they're dictated to. It can still be engaging and collaborative. The point of reference they use shouldn't always just be the law, because the law says you shall wear your hard hat isn't necessarily the way to buy trust or engagement with people. So making sure that, and this is usually where companies start, by the way, especially after a very, very bad safety situation. It's very reactive. To get past that very individualistic and reactive threshold is a level of trust that has to be built. And I can't define trust for everybody because it is as unique as your system, your company, what is empowering to your team. You might trust one of my staff to fix your toilet, but not watch your dog. Okay, so trust is situational and has to do with the conversation you're having. But once you've got a bunch of individuals who've developed a level of trust with one another, now you have a team, right? Now you have that team that's coaching one another, should be, talking, discussing challenges together. They trust each other enough in that little pod to work through challenges and problems. They start to leverage, yeah, the law is the baseline. It's the low watermark. It should be. We should be rising above that. Using data, using reference material, you start to get proactive. That's just one team. How do you get the safety team or the field management team or the engineering team to all work together in a system? It's another level of trust. The ops team has to trust my safety team. I have to trust the engineering team. So getting that level of trust, that pivotal trust piece, is also as situational as your company, but it's critical. Start looking at what those things are and build them into your leadership model. Now you've got teams that trust one another. Now you've got advocacy. My engineering team brings me into pre-design meetings now to help design hospitals, to help design the construction schedule. How many safety people are invited at that level? I have no engineering background. Okay, none. That's where systems, they start to depend on, interdependency becomes stronger and stronger, and the more successes, the more interdependency we develop with one another. They advocate for our safety program. They use it in the sales pitch now to try and sell, to get new jobs. Creates engagement. I end up speaking for other companies. I go to other companies and I'm willing to speak to my biggest competitor's team about this because, frankly, I pull from the union and we give them back to the union, and then they pull from the union and they give back and I pull their guys and gals. So eventually their problem will be my problem and their successes will be mine. So if you start thinking about it that way, I'm more than happy to engage them at a different level. You start getting there, you get intuitive about who's the best person in this situation, for this client, for this kind of conversation. And I'm not saying intuition is a guessing game. Intuition is rooted in data, in experience, in a lot of research, in a lot of knowledge, and you start to pick up on those trends. You start to feel and see those values, and you stick with those values that work. It is very scientific. That's when culture happens. Notice there's no safety word on this document. I don't believe safety is a culture. I believe safety is a driver of culture. It's a very strong driver. Okay. So, working with our people on this quite a bit, we do try and create subject matter experts within our company. We do try and use evidence-based practices as much as possible to motivate design, tendering. So our estimators know they carry more for safety than almost all of our competitors. They know they'll get it on the back end on efficiencies, reduced cost of compensation, reduced cost of poor quality tools and equipment, shutdowns for, we missed a confined space, we have to take 2 weeks to fix that and develop a program for that. They know they're going to catch it on the efficiencies on the back end. So we carry an internal and then a bidded cost for safety, and it still saves money. I'm going the wrong way every time. It's a lefty thing, I'm sure of it. So some of this stuff, we started working in collaboration, regularly work with the Institute for Work and Health, for example, work with a lot of the team members there. I've been a knowledge transfer agent for the Institute for almost 20 years. And CPWR is an organization in the US that does research as well, in construction primarily. And they reached out, and I've been working with them for the last 7 years on their SCAT model, which is a safety climate tool. We were, for the longest time, the only Canadian company in it. Now they are using plenty of Canadian companies to measure the climate of safety as a part of the culture, okay? And hey, we float, we get new staff, we get new regions, we get bad jobs. The climate goes up and down just like our weather. But we know what's causing the shift, and we can address it if we manage that. So over the years, Modern has been doing this, and we started partnering with a company out of New Zealand, of all places, and we approached CPWR and programmed, and we had approached a very small boutique software company. Said, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? It's called Noggin. It's in actually Australia, of all places. I do believe in global systemic solutions. We've been working with them for about 3 years, and we've built a collaborative model that the 3 major partners use to track our policies, how the adherence of it, our mental health, how they are interrelated with our physical health injuries, vehicles, inspections, all that thing. It's a big data aggregate. It's been devised by us and programmed, by the way, has over 100,000 construction people in the Pacific Rim. They're a small company. And the 2 of us have helped do that. The World Congress approached us and asked if we would do a presentation for them on showing how the collaboration of academia, industry, and technology can be used appropriately to drive strong outcomes. So for us, the partners involved, the strong outcomes were not just incidents, they were severe near misses. They were mental health incidents. They were all the things that are really hard to capture, and starting to cross-reference them against our policies, our training, our tools, the purchase, our operational schedules. And it's starting to separate some things for us so we can focus on different behaviors. And it does start right back at frankly, the estimating or the pre-qualification piece for a lot of us. So Dr. Goldenar's gone off to Australia, and she'll be presenting this at the World Congress, but point being, we couldn't have done this alone. CPWR couldn't have done this alone, even programmed or Noggin, none of them. It took the inertia of a bunch of people who could try something. And I think when I have people come up to me and say, how do you get your program going? And how do you continue on your journey? My answer is, don't focus on a solution. Don't focus on an outcome without being curious, being willing to not walk the straight line, being willing to sample things. Don't get into that perfection paralysis. You can reduce fatal injuries. They might still be severe, but they're not fatal. You can start reducing severe injuries to non-lost time injuries. So, being curious, being willing to wander a bit, but staying ever vigilant, very vigilant of what your movement has done to change the system, for good and for bad. Accelerate the good, reduce the bad. And I think too many of us are very, very goal-oriented, especially young people coming out of university, very goal-oriented. I'm going to say that now. Start focusing on the random walk. Random walk, be curious, and that's the way you will be more successful in the long term. Maybe not in the short term, but in the long term. Okay. And that's a big part of the intentional collaboration model that is being presented there. So some of the things that came as a conversation that drove a lot of this stuff was about 6 years ago. I was just sitting having a conversation with Dr. Cameron Mustard, the former president of the IWH, and I was talking to him, and he was trying to figure out, and he was picking my brain about, how do we take what we do and get you to do it? Sound familiar? How do we get the research and make it practical and usable and adoptable and embraced? And the CREs are an excellent venue for this. This is what they are designed to do, and I think we have the ability now to take that and embed that in each of our organizations in some way, and actually create a conduit or a champion for that research excellence. So this was a beta test, and I had to beg my CEO to try this. I did. And I said, you know what, trust me, I will deal with this if it goes bad, but I'm going to try this. And he said, okay, you've got 1 year, it's a contract term. Okay. So the role of the health and safety research excellence specialist is not out in the field the way most construction safety people, as you can imagine, are out running around doing inspections and doing safety talks and the very typical standard things. This person does go in the field for the purposes of looking at those tools, for the going and asking our field staff, what can we do to help? When they hear the challenges, they go look for the research for the solution. If there isn't any, we'd call Dwayne up at the IWH and say, Dwayne, I got a problem. Do you have anything for me on this? And this person would start to be a resource to all of our executive, our decision makers, the health and safety team. It supported people and culture, it supported labor managers. But the fundamental role itself was to look at all of our investigations, our tools, our equipment, our innovation ideas, and make sure they align, one, first and foremost, with the operational strategy. We can't be zigging when they're zagging. It's got to be in alignment with what we're trying to achieve corporately. We can't be doing research on nuclear plants if only thing we're doing next year is hospitals. Identify the data, analytics, trends, et cetera, that meet those operational needs, but also make sure that they align with our policy, that it aligns with research, that aligns with our manufacturers' tools and equipment. What do they say this tool is going to be capable of doing? It was also designed to develop some administrative tools, training, for example, accelerate training here, probably over-rotated training here just because that's the rule, okay, but we can compartmentalize that into a larger training so that it's still as effective and informative. They are supporting the development of the new and burgeoning policies and procedures around new practices that we are getting into, like drone safety. Okay, how do we do that in a safe environment? Okay, drones are great for safety people. They're the canary in the coal mines in some case, but there is planning around that. And they develop content for our estimators and procurement team. They are one of the more valuable procurement team members now, helping pick the right tools, but also pick the right jobs. We are now in a luxurious position in many cases of being able to pick the jobs we want to tender. Okay. And they support the field specialists as well as the labor managers by creating safe work content, especially when it's something new that we've never seen before. That does happen in hospitals. Hospitals are moving fast. That does happen in nuclear plants. They move fast. So some of the research, as we're building it, we're trying to keep up with the design itself. Create site-specific safety plans where needed. We provide the training content, research on safety topics, especially new and burgeoning ones, and develop and manage the different tailgate talks, podcasts. So we try and deliver this information in as many different formats as possible for the field staff. Yeah, safety talk's great. A lot of times the foremen are very uncomfortable delivering subject matter material. It's not their thing, but if we have a podcast or a small video cast on it, so much easier for them. If we have a QR code where they can drop questions to one of our specialists, way easier. So we try and create a multitude of different delivery methods for those types of compact conversations. And so what that's done is so that was about 6 years ago. What that's done is we were asked by the Institute to participate in an expenditure research study that was done by Dr. Mustard and Dr. Tompa and a couple of others. And they looked at a large swath of employers in Ontario and were trying to figure out what the cost of safety was by sector. And we, Cam called me and said, would you do it? Yeah, sure, no problem. Always open source, willing to collaborate. He called me and said, no, your data's wrong. There's something really wrong with what you're doing. You're not collecting it right or something. I said, okay, come on in. So, come on in. So, their research showed that the construction sector, on average, spent about $3,630 per year per worker. That's the good performers and the bad performers. That's the aggregate, that's the mean. And we were coming in at $2,880. And yet we were Canada's safest employer that year. It's like, you guys aren't calculating all your costs. What's going on? And so we said, come on in. He sat with our CFO for 4 or 5 hours. He sat with my CEO for 3 or 4 hours. He sat with me for a good half day. He poured through everything. And he said, actually, I think you guys actually spend less a year. No, thanks. That's awesome. So his case study showed that it was, and at the end of his case study on us, he said, it's your culture. Your culture is that X factor that is unmeasurable by typical analytics that you have been able to capture and harness. But there's a warning to that. Hubris. You will just as quickly fall off that pedestal if you assume that is now your new gold standard. And then COVID hit, okay? There's something that will take you down from your excellence post. And I'm not saying everybody in the sector's down, trust me. Our costs are higher now than they were 3 years ago. We still are doing better than 90% of the construction companies for our cost ratio for safety, but I know where every penny of that $1,800 or $2,800 is per worker. I can break it out, I can tell my estimators, I can tell my field leadership, and we could start to say, you know what, you're remote, and you're pulling from resources that are atypical. We probably should expect another couple of pennies per person, per labor hour, for training, for example. We can start to have those intelligent conversations because the costs are so granular. So I would recommend you understand where your costs of safety are. Very much to Rick's point. Knowing that granularity allows you to fine-tune and adjust those things. So, an example in action. So our research excellence person, about 4 years ago, just before COVID struck, said, we're gonna see a problem soon. And COVID was just the flu at this point, okay? We got a problem. We're starting to see some mental health issues. We're starting to see concerns from foremen. We're starting to see opioid use on jobs. We were seeing drug activity that was creeping up very quickly. We were seeing a lot of things that were very disheartening and sad. And when you would approach some of the, more conventional institutions and ask them what they were seeing, they said, that's personal, stay out of it. Stay out of it. And for those of you who know me, I listen. So I didn't. I didn't. So 2 years ago, we hired a mental health and psychological safety specialist. The first ever in a construction company in Canada. And I have to admit, I was astounded by the data that we started to harvest. In our company, year to date, we have 458 incidents. 4,500 tradespeople. Yes, that is typical construction incidents, including near misses and first aids and medical aids and stuff. Of that, 65% are MSDs. So think about that for a minute. A lot of times we're so focused on the extreme life-threatening ones, we miss the ones that really affect quality of life. But of that, 105 of them are mental health incidents. Either attempted suicides, successful, unfortunate suicides, cries for help, drug overdoses on the job, requests for commitment, please come get me now, send the police. We do get that. And in part, it's because we've got somebody that they can cry out to. I recognize that now we've given them a source to seek help, they are drinking from it. So I got a letter from one of our industry associations that said, you need to back down. This is not our problem. And I wrote back, and I've still got the letter, you're not the boss of me. Because these 105 people this year, I'm critically worried about. They're my family. In construction, 30% of the workforce right now is suffering some form of opioid usage or misusage. Okay? And it fluctuates, but it's think about it, 1 in 3-ish. I have 105 incidents this year in the field of mental health crying. Yes, I have 4,500 tradespeople. It's still underreported. Okay? So this person became critical and overwhelmed within 3 months of working in our organization. They did an assessment. They picked on the critical trends. We did have an EFAP program. We've since gone and repurposed that and got a new one that is more targeted toward construction, mobile workforces, that kind of thing. Much more boutique, smaller program, but more concise for what construction workers need. We looked at our internal trends. We looked at our 4 people, and they are not capable. They have not been given the tools to support this, and they want to. Many of them are desperate to help. We've got a champions program, and it's constantly full. This is where we've offered it to the unions. And the unions have standing position with any of our first aid mental health. They can put in 1, 2, 3 people in any program. Again, they're going to come around to us at some point. We're willing to share our mental health program with anybody. It's a 5-step program. It's really basic. Micro-training, mental health first aid, find your champions, build a successful program, provide resources. Like I said, for 2 years, we were the only construction company in Canada with a mental health and psychological safety specialist. Happy to say that Ellis Don has actually hired one, and I'm really thrilled that some of the big contractors are recognizing total worker health will affect the quality outcome of health and safety. I recommend any company with any level of mental health stresses, and hospital sector absolutely is a big one. Construction is a big one. Forestry, mining, all of those really stressful, physically demanding sectors have underlying opioid issues and mental health issues. And I'm not calling it mental illness. It's a spectrum, folks. Just like you could be very healthy with diabetes, right? It doesn't, everybody in this room will have a suppression of their mental health at some point. It's giving them the tools to cope with it and to make it through the next day and get better again. So making sure our field staff, who are, like I said, pretty much an old boys club right now, changing that dynamic to be more diversified, not only in the population, but in their thought process. Okay? And I'm thrilled to see a couple more construction companies out there starting to embark on the journey to find their mental health and psychological safety experts. It's too many, and it is one of the things that our research excellence specialist did note. So what I would say in closing is this journey is not a goal. You can select your goal, you can have your strategy, keep your head up, be willing to meander a bit, but stay curious and stay hyper-focused on what's working, what isn't, adjust. Those micro-adjustments all the time are what will really accelerate a program for that people-centered excellence. And with that, any questions? I'm the last one. I was not expecting questions.
I know everybody wants to get out of here and go home, unless you're staying here. So, as a construction company, and I know a lot of different construction companies vary on this, but what percentage would you say do your estimators allocate for health and safety when budgeting a project and bidding on a project?
So it's not a fixed number. We will look at the risk of the job, the
Right.
location of the job, the complexity of the job, and I will work with them to assign a dollar figure per labor hour
Right.
to the job. Fixed cost-wise, I'm challenging them to, right now and sometimes it's lower, but I challenge them to use the median number of 75 cents a labor hour
Okay.
per project.
Okay.
That gets them all the training, that gets them the coverage of the safety person, that gets them the coverage of all the extra PPE, of all the time they take to do their morning safety talks and their plans of the day. All
Right.
of that stuff is covered inside that 75 cents per labor hour. That's not a lot. That's several minutes a day. But when you build the program and develop the strategy to be efficient with that 75 cents per labor hour, it's quite effective, because now we can start to look at whether that's cost enough, is there an inflation, is there an adjustment? And now we can start to look at the risks of each project and say, we can run a little leaner on this project, or we don't have to. We can run a little more robust because there's extra safety expectations to certain projects, as you can imagine. So now we can knowingly adjust for risk.
Right. I actually worked with Modern Niagara on a project last year, so.
Oh,
yes.
thank
They
you.
they were on my project. Sorry.
Perfect, even better. Hope we were doing a good job. All right, thank you.
Not yet, not yet.
Oh.
Sorry, one more question. So we've talked a lot about, I think, total worker health and a very integrated approach, and obviously you've been now with Modern Niagara for a number of years. I know there's a lot of consultants in the room where maybe your engagements aren't as embedded. Given the expertise you had as a consultant before this, could you speak to how you achieved these types of outcomes within that role?
Sure. Thanks. So, like I said, I've only been with Modern for just a little over 8 years now. Before that, my entire career was in consulting, right out of university. So for the consultants who struggle to get that listening time or to get that respect or trust to be able to deliver a service that you know will help, you have to give a little to get a little. Actually, you give a little and you get a lot. What I mean by that is, Steve and I know each other from the Kinesiology board, okay? So volunteering within your profession. But I also did a lot of volunteer work and donated some time to the different associations. In my case, it was mechanical contractors or refrigeration contractors and that kind of thing, especially for their small customer clients who didn't have the capacity to afford a safety person. The organization built trust with me. I would volunteer on their boards and that kind of thing, but I also donate some time to their small clients. That level of trust and that demonstration of skill over time built up quite a strong client base for me. Now, my consulting career was different. I did a lot of fatality reconstruction. I was a forensic fatality reconstruction, and so the level of trust that you're forced into very quickly did create some level of bonds and relationship. But the ones that were my strongest clients, most dedicated, they didn't have fatalities or reasons to hire me other than heard me in associations. I gave them a little bit, worked with them. They came and got a little bit more, built a little more trust, came back and got a little bit more and built a little more trust. And over time, they became some of my best advocates when their colleague or competitor companies would be into trouble. How are you guys dealing with this? And I say this to everybody, you might be competitors in business, but you're allies in your profession. And that's the same for mechanical contractors and electrical contractors and hospitals and everything else. They still talk, and we heard the hospital team talk about it earlier. We reached out to the other hospitals and asked what they were doing. If you're not doing that, you're missing a huge amount of information, networking, collaboration, and frankly, trust-building opportunity.
Thank you.
Wasn't going to say something. However, you give a government official a mic, and it's a good thing. Just want to say, to Jack and to the rest of everyone, I'm heartened. What I've heard, the opportunity to spend a day with you, they don't let me out of the office much. But I told them I wanted to come today. And it's for these reasons. The discussions around framework of community, the discussions around frameworks of systems, the discussions about how that system now translates to what we want to do together to improve health, to improve well-being. I'm heartened. Because at the end of the day, and I've said this many times, we don't go to work saying that we're going to injure ourselves. most of the time. Knowing that there are some issues that do exist in our society every day. So where and how do we continue to build upon those great successes that you do every day within your work, you do every day within your companies, you do every day within your societies and your profession that you represent? I'm heartened. Once again, I get excited because this is the great things that we do. I call it epidemiology, but I'll just put aside to it. But once again, at the end of the day, the opportunities that we have and what I'm hearing about the research and how the research is being translated to be put into practical, everyday opportunities, those are the things that I would love to hear about. Because at the end of the day, when we're trying to create better policy, when we're trying to create better frameworks, these are the types of things that are enabling us to tell the story. Our labor colleagues with work, the worker as the center, the wraparound services, medical model, work model, putting the individuals first. Interesting concept. We're now coming to a place where we're finding that the difference between work and home, even more gray. Where's your work location? Am I remote? Am I off-site? Am I mobile? Oh yeah, there actually still is a brick and mortar office. So once again, how are we moving forward and continuing to think about that, especially when we're looking at the ergonomics of what we do? See, I'll bring it back to ergonomics. All right? See? Because once again, all those things matter. And the concepts around pain, the management of pain, and the utility to ensure that we're going to be able to optimize our workspaces to do the work that we love to do and what we're hired to do at the end of the day. So once again, thank you for allowing me to come and listen. I learn every day. I made some notes. My phone is kind of full with things that my team is probably going to not be happy with me tomorrow morning because I have questions. And that is to Erin's, your point. Be inquisitive. No one knows everything. And if you do, you don't know anything. Being honest. Questions. Ask. Because I guarantee that there's an expert that will help you understand where and what questions and what answers can be there. And so I'll always ask you and leave you with this question as a challenge. How might I? How might I? No is easy. How might I? So thank you, Jack, appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Moody. Truly appreciate you spending the whole day with us. I know how busy your time is. I want to thank my team as well, Bettina, Catherine, Jacqueline, and Steve. They make me look good by really running everything behind the scenes for the meeting. Some thoughts to enter. That was a very powerful talk, Erin. Being the perpetual smartass, I will say, you put up this slide and you started from safety program was 0, and I thought, most people try to go road to 0. So is your mission road from 0 to 0? Or so, but honestly, that was very, very good. Steve mentioned our resource for psychosocial factors, mental health, and MSDs with the CSA 1003 that Kirk mentioned is linked to MSD pathways. And the really thing I want to bring here is we've heard about business and we tried to go bigger scale with this meeting. But MSDs are not just lost time injuries, right? MSDs can lead to mental health can lead to MSDs, okay? Thank you for bringing up the opioid crisis. We are working on another resource, hopefully will come out this year, on MSDs as an entry, essentially, into opioid addiction. It's scary. If you haven't seen Painkiller on Netflix, I highly encourage you to watch it. If that doesn't open your eyes of the impact of MSDs and how they can impact someone's life, I don't know what can. It is so powerful. And it all starts an injury that leads to an opioid crisis and how it changes people's lives. So it's not just that company has lost time and has to have a replacement worker and quality suffers and these other things. We are still talking about people. And I know everybody in this room probably entered this career path or the job you're doing because you cared about people. And that's the closing word I want to leave you with is we're talking bigger picture. We have to speak the language of engineers and businesses and financial factors. But ultimately, I think Erin's direct words were, people matter. These are people that have families, are going home. You know, if we don't look after them, all of the other stuff falls apart anyways. So we have to be in this game of, games may be the wrong word, but we have to be in this business of speaking business and engineering, but ultimately our goal is the same as it was when all we cared about was protecting a worker. People matter, we need to keep them safe. So go out and help people. We're done.